Hello and welcome to Personable, a podcast focused on speaking to the world's best, enabling you to become the best that you can be. Whether you're a first-time listener or returning, please make sure to like, comment and subscribe. Currently only 3 out of the 100 listeners listening are subscribed, and we're trying to get that number to 1,000 before I go back to university in the fall. Today is a very special episode featuring my own flesh and blood, Jack and Charlie Bracken, people that have done exceptionally well for themselves and are pushing our family to new heights. Charlie was a player for the England under-20s and England under-18s and now plays for the Saracens men team. And Jack has been a player for England under-18s, England under-20s, Saracens men's and Amped Hill. Jack also has won the under-20s World Cup for England, following in his father's footsteps. As I just mentioned, Charlie and Jack Bracken are the sons of Kyran Bracken, who won the World Cup for England in 2003. This is both nerve-wracking, perhaps the most nervous I've been for an episode with my own family, people that I've kind of grown up with. But anyway, I want to get started by asking you both, and I'll start with Charlie, how and why you decided to follow in your father's footsteps and play rugby.
Yeah, well, I guess I played rugby kind of when I was younger, obviously chucking a ball in the back garden with Jack and Lockie and Dad. But I think my dad actually took me down to Saracens amateurs initially. And I turned up there and I absolutely hated it. So it didn't go too well to start with. But then I just went to a local rugby club called Barnet Elizabethans with more of my mates there, and kind of fell in love with it there. Started playing at Barnet with all my mates after school and playing games on a Sunday. So I'd say there's where my love for rugby grew and kind of then continued through. Obviously, going to school, we went to Lockham House School, which was great for our rugby initially. I mean, nor me or Jack went to extremely rugby dominant schools. Like, we played a lot of different sports growing up, football, rugby, basketball, even, like all sorts. So it wasn't kind of like we started with rugby and then kind of just stuck with it. I mean, there was experimentation with a lot of different sports, but I guess obviously with Dad's influence, he kind of got us into rugby initially by taking us down to these clubs. But yeah, I guess that's where my love for rugby first began.
And I feel like over time, there's a lot of parents who are very confident in their kids, and there's also a lot of other rugby players and other sports athletes that have confidence in their kids, but they aren't really able to reach the same level. Jack, from your perspective, when was the sort of point in time when you realised I'm not just playing rugby for fun, but I'm actually taking it to the next level, and I am doing better than those around me, playing for Saracens, getting picked for England, etc. Was there a critical point in time that you can, think back to?
I wouldn't say so. I think I'd always feel like so as soon as I started playing rugby, I was playing with older players, and I think that was sort of a sign to me that, I'm quite good at this. I had a sort of similar introduction to rugby as Charlie, but I was playing football a lot more up until about 13, 14. And I think at that age, when I had to make a choice between rugby and football, almost like the decision was quite clear to me that I could have a future in rugby, and yeah, it was something that I wanted to pursue.
Well, something that I don't think a lot of people would know about you, and I've gone to Eton and at Duke, I'm doing well on my own side, but both of you have probably got similar, if not even better grades than I have, and yet you're still sort of pursuing that rugby pursuit. Charlie, from your perspective, was there ever a point in time when you were like, I'm getting really good grades, I could go to an incredible university, get an incredible job, earn a lot of money, going down that path? Was there ever something in your mind thinking, maybe I'll just stick to the books? Or, was it always that rugby was your passion and you wanted to, go down that route?
I applied for Oxford actually. I did get rejected, but I did apply there. So I was thinking about possibly kind of continuing my studies through that route, and obviously possibly going into a job maybe in the city or something like that. But I think that passion for rugby was always there, and there was kind of a burning passion within. And so at the end of the day, it really wasn't too much of a choice for me. I think maybe if I did get into Oxford, it could have changed things. But like I say, yeah, I'm still at Loughborough University now, kind of doing my geography degree, and balancing the rugby and the uni simultaneously, which I've found quite good. I've enjoyed studying at uni. It's given me a good thing to fall back on, and also something that I enjoy as well. But yeah, for me, I think sport's always been what I wanted to do. I've always wanted to be a professional athlete, professional rugby player. Like, it's been my dream from the start. So I don't think it was a choice in that sense. But maybe from an outside perspective, looking in, like, obviously your parents want you to kind of go into something that's going to set you up well, and rugby's quite precarious. You know, you can get injured at any minute. But for me, it was always a dream. So yeah.
I think there's got to be a presumption. I mean, even how I introduced this podcast, your dad did XYZ, was an incredible rugby player. And so being his children, there's sort of an expectation that you would do the same. Jack, from your perspective, do you think a good rugby player is born or made?
Good question. I think I always go back to this quote. I hear it quite a lot. So like, talent gets you in the door, but hard work keeps you there. And I think it is definitely a combination of both. I think genetics and talent does play like a big part of it. Like for me, I definitely rely on my genetics a lot more than I'd say Charlie would, who's probably worked on his craft probably a bit more, depending on his position, obviously. But his hard work has got him to where he is now, and I think my genetics and my athleticism has definitely helped me to get where I am today as well. So it's definitely a balance. I would probably say leaning towards they're born rather than made, but it's a difficult one.
Jack, I want to ask
I'd
another.
answer that as well. Oh,
Go on.
sorry.
Go on.
Yeah, I just add that, like, although Jack, yeah, he's very talented. He's had to work very hard as well to get where he is. And I think, like he said, the hard work part of things is where it really matters when it gets to the professional side of things. Like, once you've signed that contract, like the work he's doing now, he's been working really hard to get to where he is and pushing the first team. So, like you said, that talent's probably got him to where he is, but the hard work's where it's kind of taken him.
Saracens, for those that don't know, is one of the best clubs in the whole of Europe and perhaps the entire world. They've won multiple championships, and we could go through a whole list of the things they've won and the amazing players that have played for the club, as well as Kyran Bracken being a legend at the club. Charlie, could you describe to me a little bit about what it means to be a part of Saracens? What's the culture like? Why is it so special? And why Saracens is the place that you want to, start your career off at?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Sarries is a great place. I think, obviously, growing up around the environment, you always want to be a part of it. Just because of how amazing the club is. Really, it's definitely a family club, very very family environment. And I think the values underpinning the club are great as well. Like, it's full of really good people, and that's what's driven the club to success. Not necessarily getting the best players in the world, although there have been a lot of very good players playing for Sarries, but kind of the mentality behind everything, the core values, the respect, the honesty, the discipline, and also just a care within the group. I think everyone cares for each other pretty deeply. Quite a close knit group, I'd have to say. Like, a lot of the boys are really really close, and although this season it hasn't gone exactly the way we wanted it to, I think the foundations are there, and especially there's a lot of young boys coming through as well, and the academy system is really good, and the integration is great as well. So I think the Sarries is just obviously a club full of legends that have played in the past, but I think it's more the values that have kind of driven the club to success, which makes it a great place to be.
Jack, I want to ask you the same question.
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Yeah, it's just essentially like, why Saracens? What makes it special? What's the culture like? And how have you found that from your experience?
I think my experience so far has been really positive. I obviously joined when some of the big names left, like the Farrell, Vinopolas, and a few others. So my experience probably been a bit different to Charlie's, but from the get go, it was really welcoming. I mean, it was sort of like a rebuild when I joined, so I could really see those values, like Charlie mentioned, the discipline, the work rate, the honesty, the humility, all underpinned really. And like I said, those values really driven Sarries to success over the past few years, and I think it will help them get back to that success in the near future.
So my younger brother, as you know, your cousin, my brother, has also been trying to pursue a career in rugby, and he's kind of gone down a different path, but he's still sort of knowledgeable about the scene. And something that he's found to be very evident, as seen by the likes of Henry Pollock, and we can talk about him later, has been the idea that you have to burst on the scene. So it's not just about, existing and being in the squad for rugby, but when you get your shot, you have to be really special. Jack, I want to ask you this question first, and then Charlie. Jack, what has it been like in this race to the first team for Saracens? And what is the importance of playing in the championship? For example, yesterday you scored 4 tries and were man of the match. What's that experience been like, and, what's the plan?
I think it's definitely a really competitive environment. At Sarries, you do have to get lucky with all the big names in the first team squad, a lot of established players. You do have to get lucky with that break. And like you said, like Henry Pollock's doing, you do have to make the most of it. But with the championship, I think it's a great place to develop as a player. It's a great introduction to men's rugby and getting used to the physicality and the speed of the game. So Charlie has more experience of it than me, but this year I've been using it to put my name forward for the first team, to show that I can cope with men's rugby, to show I can play different positions. Like last week, or yesterday actually, was my first time playing fullback at a senior level. So it's just about putting your name forward, doing everything you can, standing out in the championship. So when you do get your chance in the Premiership, you make the most of it.
Charlie?
Yeah, like you were saying, from the outside in, it does kind of look like a linear projection of going from academy to I don't know, playing uni and then to AMP2 and to first team. But I think it's definitely a lot more complicated than that. For example, with me, I played my first season at Loughborough, kind of did my whole season there. Then the season after played at AMP2, and then the year after, kind of had this year, have had a few Sarries games, but then was not selected and went back to the championship for most of the season. And now, just towards the end of the season, I'm playing some more Premiership games on the bench. So, although it does look linear, like I say, for Freddie, for anyone, a lot of players' developments looks completely different. Like the average age to break into the first team isn't 21, 22. It's a lot later, which a lot of the boys at Sarries, they're 24, 25 and just about to break into the first team. So it's I think it's very different for a lot of players. But as you've seen with Henry Pollock, sometimes the expectation is you go in, you rip it up and you're straight into the first team, then you play England's and then you play Lions. But I think that is really that's not the norm, that's the exception. But as a player yourself, you want that to be you. But I think, like Jack said, the champ is a great place. I mean, it's been great for me getting loads of minutes in the champ. It's a big step up from any rugby that I'd played before, and kind of gave me a good chance to kind of lead that AMP2 side. It's been a great experience for me, and has helped me greatly.
Yeah, so as a bit of background for those listening, our grandparents on the Bracken side were born in Ireland, as well as your dad and my mum were also born in Ireland. But then as Uncle Kyran came up through the rugby scene and was around your age, he wasn't given as many opportunities to play for Ireland. And, with his grandma or granddad being from England, he was able to play for England. I was speaking to your dad earlier, Charlie, and he was telling me that in the pandemic, you were offered the backwards opportunity to go and play for Ireland. How did that sort of decision come about? Is it more important to just be able to play international rugby or play for your country? Could you walk me through that decision-making process?
Yeah, I think so. I played Academy League, so this is when I was under 18s, and played most of the season. Was playing pretty well and wasn't really getting any opportunities for England. I wasn't invited to many England camps. So it came to the last game of the season, which was the final almost. And Kevin Maggs, one of the Ireland recruitment players, said to my dad after watching me at the game, would he consider playing for Ireland? And my first thought was, yeah, let's do it. Like, I'm not getting selected for England. Let's go play for Ireland, because at the end of the day, it was about playing international rugby more than for who, I guess. Obviously, if I got offered them at the same time, I would have said definitely England, because I feel English. But then after even when I was playing for England, when I did choose England after getting selected, the only reason I got selected was because the two scrum halves ahead of me both got fully injured, and I had to start in a game against Wales, and kind of went from there upwards, playing 19s, then 20s. But if I didn't get that opportunity and I didn't make the most of that, then I don't think I'd be sat here today. So a lot of it is about luck. But as you say, like the Ireland thing, it wasn't really about, you know, which country you're playing for. It was more about playing for a country in a sense. But yeah, looking back, I'm glad I did pick England.
Charlie, I want to go ask you a few more questions down this path and then come back to you, Jack. Jack mentioned something about more focus on the genetic. I mean, Jack is, for those that don't know, extremely fast, but obviously has had to work tremendously hard to get to where he is. But Charlie, particularly on your pass and other parts of your game, your ability to be able to work harder than anyone else to achieve that skill, as well as being very genetically gifted as well, are an explosive combination. Which sort of parts of your game have you worked on over time? How do you outwork other people? Like, how do you even determine what you need to focus on to become the world's best and, you know, progress as a rugby player?
Yeah, it's a great question. Well, I think, like you said, I think obviously kind of I've had part of the genetics in being like getting, so I'm not incredibly quick, I'm not not incredibly fit or whatever, but I've kind of worked hard and like tried to maximize my natural talent in a way, and I think in terms of trying to be the best player I can be, and how do I know what I want to get after, I think since turning professional, just asking the coaches, right, what is it that I need to get better at? What is it that's going to get me in the first team? And like, how am I going to do this? And after having like chats with all the coaches, from academy coaches to Mark McCall, all the coaches, I think I've done that over the past 2 years. And for example, I asked the coaches like, what's going to get me in the team, and they say, well, your kicking needs to be better, and that's going to get you in the team because we know your passing's good, you've got the fitness there, your defence is good, but your kicking needs to improve greatly, and that was true at the time, and so I worked on it really hard, kind of through that season in the champ, and that ultimately my kicking is what got me into the team for the latter end of the season. So I think it shows that even if you're not necessarily completely gifted in one facet of the game, that practice and repetitions is what gets you to where you want to be in a sense. Because even for me, like, well, I'd do extra kicking after training, and then I'd do more kicking after everyone's finished, and then I'd kick on my days off. So I was kind of driven to improve that aspect of my game, and I think for me now it's about kind of maintaining that rather than kind of letting it drop off.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't even know this until I was researching the both of you prior to this interview, but I looked you up on like the England Rugby website or whatever, and it was literally like you'd only had one missed pass and you'd had like hundreds of successful completed passes. So I think that shows just how good that's come. One last question, sort of while I'm on this point, Charlie, more feeling focused than necessarily what you did, but you've had the opportunity to represent England playing in the Six Nations. Could you talk to me a little bit about what that felt, getting selected, training with the team, and eventually putting on that England shirt and representing your country?
Yeah, I mean, it was an amazing feeling. I think every time you play for England, it's a massive occasion, but especially when you play in a competition like a Six Nations or a World Cup, it feels like it means just that bit more. And it's a pretty surreal experience. I mean, I'd say nerve-wracking, because it was nerve-wracking, especially the first few times. But kind of because I played up initially, I was kind of 18, 19 when I was playing in the 20s. I was still in the under 18 year. That was quite a surreal experience. Kind of felt a bit imposter syndrome, like, oh, do I really deserve to be here? But I think once you actually step foot on the pitch and you're just playing rugby, those feelings go away. But when you do well, when you win, when you score, like, the feelings are amazing. And reflecting back on it, is kind of it's a great thing to look back on and be proud of. But yeah, like I say, it was a whole range of emotions when putting on the England jersey.
I feel like there's a lot of different, I mean, there's obviously a lot of different positions in rugby, and it's often the faster runners or whatever that get a lot of the credit. So Charlie, as well as you having this amazing pass, it's often players like Jack who end up scoring 20 tries that it looks like he's doing a good job, even though you're doing incredibly well as well. But now shifting back to you, Jack, I mean, you've had this incredible rise to the top, not quite the Henry Pollock, because I feel like he's just, he's now playing for the Lions, but extraordinary in its own right. Particularly when you joined the World Cup squad last year, you scored a hat trick, which I think was the first for an England player in a number of years, and just done incredibly well on the scene. And I think even watching you as a child run through people, it almost seems you now do that to men, which is pretty funny to watch. Could you give me a similar sort of spiel on what your journey was like for getting selected for England, being able to play at such a high level and keep winning all the way up to winning an under-20s World Cup medal?
Yeah, it's definitely been a really good journey. I think my England journey started at under-18s. I was lucky enough to play a few Six Nations games, which was incredibly special. Still in school, getting to play. I was in Ireland, playing against Ireland, France, and Italy, and it was really surreal. It's always a dream of, I think, every little young rugby players to put on an England jersey, and to be able to do that at 18 is just incredibly special. And then, yeah, I had the under-20s World Cup in South Africa. That was a bit of a whirlwind. Obviously, starting my first game, getting a hat trick, felt like on top of the world. And then had a few setbacks, really. I think I played South Africa, and it highlighted a few of my weaknesses and maybe put a little bit of distrust in the coaches in terms of my defence, really. And then didn't get selected for the semi-final, which definitely got to me a little bit, and then on the bench for the final, but only got a few minutes. So it was definitely really special. I'd say it was bittersweet, the final, obviously getting a medal and getting on the pitch, but not really having any impact on the game was definitely difficult. But I've definitely used that for this season, used it as motivation, got the World Cup in Italy in a month or so. So yeah, hopefully can win it again. But I've been really enjoyed the whole England Pathway program. I think it's really good for me, and it's every time you put on an England jersey, it's really special.
I want to go a lot deeper on the mindset element of rugby, because training wise, reaching the top, natural ability, and then even being able to train a skill and become the best, there's only a few people on the planet that are able to reach the ability to get a skill that's that incredible. But what is something that people can learn is the ability to transfer the mindset skills, the learnings, the lessons into their own lives. And that's actually one of the main reasons that I do this podcast. So I want to delve a little bit deeper into just what you mentioned, Jack. And I'll start off with you. What is something that people do not see or don't understand, or a misconception people have about mental health in the game of rugby?
I think mental health, like mentality in rugby, is definitely undertrained. We do a bit of work with a psychologist every now and then, but arguably it makes up 50% of your game, but we probably train it about 10% of the time. So it's definitely something that needs to be worked on in the game as a whole. I think some players don't really understand how, like, the significance of having a positive mindset during a game, how much impact it really makes. Yeah, for me, it's something that I don't really focus on either. I just kind of get on with it, which is probably not the most sustainable way to look at it, but it's definitely something that needs to be, yeah, looked at more and developed more.
And as an extension of that, Jack, what do you think? I mean, you mentioned it like in terms of just pure spending time on it, but if you could flip a magic switch and change one thing, like what would you improve to help with this problem?
I'd say the education part of it is really important. Like I said, it's just not talked about enough probably. Um, and therefore people don't understand the importance of it. I certainly don't yet. I'm sure I will over time appreciate it, but yeah, probably just the awareness of it.
So, Charlie, I kind of mentioned this before, but being a scrum half, you're almost like the quarterback in rugby, in which you have a very fundamental impact on the overall aspect of the game. But there's still 14 other people on the pitch who are also making their own impacts. So you can have the best game in the world and you can still lose the game. So you can, do really well and it still not go your way. which obviously will have at least a small impact on how you feel about the game and what you're doing. How have you been able to, approach mental health, and not even mental health, but more, how do you keep yourself going and bounce back when the game doesn't go well, to keep getting better, to keep progressing, and to continually become, even though it's not linear, to continually become a better version of yourself and a better rugby player?
Yeah, it's a great point, because I think that's, like Jack was saying, it's really not talked about much in rugby at all. I don't know if that's because there's a stigma behind it, or whether it's just kind of part of the way rugby is. But I think like life, there's loads of ups and downs in rugby, especially like you say, the resilience is the hardest part, and that's been the toughest part for me mentally is the resilience side of things. Being a scrum half, I think your mistakes really get shown on how the team performs. And for example, if you make a mistake, it can cost you the game. It's quite a high pressured position, and I think I've definitely experienced it in the past. But trying to be resilient is really tough when things aren't going your way, whether that's not being selected or just having a bad game in general. Like, I've had games where we've won, and we've won comfortably, and it's been a big game and we've won it, but I've played shit and I've still felt shit. I think a lot of players can relate to it, where even though you won and you should be on top of the world, you're constantly thinking, I don't know if it's more of a perfectionist mindset, thinking, oh, I could have done this and I could have done that. But like I said, I've definitely tried to be better at it, but I think it's it is definitely tough, and I think some people struggle with it more than others. But wanting to be perfect and wanting to have the best game you can every week, obviously you're going to make mistakes, and I tried to say to myself, you can't get down from a couple of mistakes, but then I'll be replaying the mistakes in my head. So I think it's definitely something that hasn't been talked about too much, but through working with a psychologist and through conversations with other players about experiencing similar things is what's helped me, I think. But I think as well, like Jack said, the mentality side of things, I've done a lot of work on my mindset going into games, and using that as kind of a competitive advantage, kind of going into positive thinking and visualization, and breathing techniques, stuff like that has helped me change the way I view the game in a way.
Yeah, I think as even just a compliment to both of you, there's always that thing of your closest five people. And admittedly, I haven't been seeing you guys as much since I've been at university in the US, but we used to have holidays every summer and sometimes see each other throughout the year. And I'd sort of see you guys progressing year on year. And, when I wanted a fizzy drink, you'd always stick to water and make these habits over time. And even from a subconscious level, I mean, it was conscious for me. When I would see you guys make these consistently good decisions over time, it actually inspired me to be better. And so that's a compliment to both of you that, even when it doesn't feel like it's right, the effect that you have through your lives has a big impact. I want to move to something kind of similar on that point. So the university I'm at is called Duke, and it's a really big basketball school. And university sport is as big as professional rugby or professional basketball, etc., as the college sport. It's a similar tier of level. And we were in the Final Four, which is the semi-final, the team was. And we have this guy, Cooper Flagg. He's supposed to go number one in the draft. Going to be an incredible. He is going to be an incredible basketball player. He's only 18 years old, and in basically the last few minutes of the game, Duke, my team, were ahead. But then the other team got closer and closer and closer, up to the point where it literally got to the last few seconds of the game, and he had to make one shot, and that would determine whether we won or lost the game. He missed the shot, and we unfortunately lost the game. It's similar to a penalty shootout. You've got to make it or you lose. And for you, Charlie, it might be that final pass, that final run, or for you, Jack, it's that run to actually win a game. I want to ask this to you first, Charlie, and then to you, Jack. In the moment, so not reflective or what went well or what went badly, when you're in that moment and you have to make a run, you have to make a task, you have to make that tackle, when the whole world is watching, how do you deal with that stress to go out and perform?
Yeah, I just start with amazing work on all of the Duke stuff. Like, you guys are doing so well, and I've been watching all the competitions online and all the sevens competitions online. But no, it's it's really great from you guys, and it looks great fun as well. I have to say, some of the celebrations look great. But yeah, in terms of that pressure that comes with playing, I think it is a very hard thing to deal with, and the thing is, it gets lesser over time. I think the more you face situations where you're under a lot of pressure, whether that be from the coaches, from yourself, from external social media or whatever, the more you experience it and the more you go through, almost the more you go through failures, especially with, for example, for me playing for Amptil, there's loads of times where, I cracked under the pressure and I made a mistake that could have cost us the game, or experiences like that. But I think learning from them and learning that, right, when you get off the field, it's not going to be the end of the world. You're still going to be able to play rugby. You're still going to be able to do all the things you love. Like, it really has a really minimal impact on the rest of your life. I think putting it into perspective is what helps. And so, yeah, when you get your mindset right, then the pressure becomes something not to look forward to, but something that you're okay with.
I can just add to that. I think often in a game you can like get hijacked by previous mistakes or like by the past or the future even. And I think it's really important about staying in the present at every moment. Like mistakes been and gone. Like if you know you have a task to do, just don't get hijacked about constantly thinking about what you have to do in the next few minutes. Just focus on, we talk about next job mentality and just what you have to do in the immediate. Because you can often catastrophize mistakes of what's just happened, and then you look back on a game like, oh, it really wasn't that bad. So it's about keeping a level mindset, and that's obviously easier said than done. But yeah, it can be really. I'm yet to experience unreal levels of pressure. I think in my under 20s level, it's not the end of the world if you don't win a game. It's not proper men's rugby yet, but I'm sure I will experience those high pressure situations soon, and it's about how you deal with it when they come.
So I mentioned the name before, Henry Pollock, and it's kind of come from a place where, he is Freddie's age, he's your age, Jack. Well, he might be a year older, but similar school year. I think maybe between the years. And I can remember hearing about him going to Stowe School and doing well in the rugby. But then he's kind of just like accelerated all the way up the ladder. But something that's particularly noticeable about not only his incredible rugby abilities is that he's pretty confident and he says a lot of things, and some people either love him or hate him. And he's sort of gathered that traction around him. I want to ask you, Jack, of whether you think a figure like him is good or bad for the game of rugby.
So I played with Henry since under 18s level really, and you could always tell he was a character. And I was almost sort of waiting for the world to see it. I think it's definitely really positive for the game of rugby. You see, like, he's already increasing traction for the game. He's making a name for himself and for Northampton Saints, and obviously they lost in the final recently. But a lot of their headline has been on Henry Pollock rather than on Northampton Saints, and I think it's probably credit to him as a person. He's really outgoing. He's really confident. But if you're going to have that confidence, you have to be able to back it up, and I think that's what he has done. But rugby could do with a few more of those personalities, I'd say, just to build the audience and build the interest in it. So yeah, I think it is good for the game, but there is a fine line between being confident and being a character, and then also being a villain and starting like getting people to hate you. So yeah, there's definitely a fine line between the two.
And Jack, on that point, not to sort of go down that hole too deep, but from a perspective of someone that's a similar age who's sort of risen to the top, and I can't really think of many other examples as him, does that sort of inspire you to also reach the top, and it shows that the path is possible to get into those sort of teams? Or does it make you feel behind that he's been able to do it and you're not at that point yet?
No, I'd say a bit of both, but predominantly the former. I think he's shown it is possible, and like yeah, if you're good enough, you're old enough, really. So it's definitely a motivation to get in the position he is. Yeah.
So, Charlie, I think my maybe second, third, or fourth podcast on Personable was with your dad. And he even spoke at Eton when I was in school. And obviously, this has been a conversation I've had with him over the last few years. as well as where our grandparents live and where I live in Jersey, there used to be a championship rugby club, which has now gone under. It kept going under, back and forth sort of situation. But then in the Premiership itself, clubs like London Irish have gone under, and there's often been talks of, stadiums not being filled and rugby not doing as well. Meanwhile, you've got France where people are getting paid millions of dollars. It's their blood. It's what they care about more than anything. What's your perspective on where rugby is at the moment? Is it growing? Is it dying? Will people still be interested in the game in 5 years? And could it reach the heights of something like football ever could? Or do you think it's going to stay stagnant?
Yeah, sure. It's a great question because I think a lot of the talk around rugby is negative. Like you said, with clubs going under, you've got obviously London Irish that went under, Worcester that went under, but is actually now coming back into the champ. Clubs like that, and it is terrible to see. But I think, like with Henry Pollock increasing the traction for the game, there's so much potential, and I honestly think there's so much potential. I think rugby itself is a really exciting product, and I think what will help the game grow is just adding those personalities into it. Like you look at the NFL and the success of that sport, and all the characters and all the celebrations that go with it. And I think in rugby, obviously, it's been renowned as a very respectful game, but I think commercialising on it a bit more and getting the right structures in place to make it a product that people want to see is going to drive it forward. And that's got bits to do with obviously the commercialisation of the game and the characters within it, but also kind of the rules of rugby itself, making it a more simple, easier product to follow so that you can get that mass following that football has. But I definitely... me personally, obviously being involved in the sport, I have a positive outlook on it, and I don't think there's any reason to suggest that it couldn't grow as big to what it is in France.
Is there an incentive for either of you to, be more outward or boisterous to kind of garner attention away? You look at a figure like Jake Paul, and he is the villain. He's someone that gets hated on, but it sells tickets. Like his, fight with Mike Tyson was one of the most watched fights in all of history. Do either of you feel that, both in terms of building up your own careers and profiles and for the game, that something like that is a necessary evil?
I wouldn't say I'm massive on the side of having a big personality myself, but I definitely do think maybe when I'm a bit older, gained a bit more kind of confidence within myself and my playing ability, that side might come out. But I definitely think I want to pursue kind of the social media side of things in the future. Like you've seen for Marrow, he's been able to remain, he's not the biggest character in the world, but he's garnered a lot of following online from his rugby and all the social media stuff he's done.
Yeah, I was going to agree with Charlie. Like, I think especially a club like Saracens, there's not really any space for a character like that. You'd get shot down pretty quickly if you were overconfident or have a massive ego at the club, and it wouldn't do you any favours. But like Charlie said, once you're an established player, I think that's definitely something that becoming more of a character would be easier to do. But yeah.
So I believe it was around Christmas time. I think it was this year. It may have been the year before. I believe it was this year. And I was sort of going through my feed, and I hadn't heard from Charlie in a while. And there was something about a dice roll. And I was thinking, what the hell is a dice roll? And I just kept thinking to myself, I started messaging him, started calling him, speaking to the rest of my family, like, what's going on here? Anyway, I opened my feed to a live stream. I recorded the whole thing, and I'm happy to post on X if anyone wants it. I'm kidding. Yeah. A video of Charlie singing beautifully, like Beauty and the Beast type vibes, more on the princess type vibe than the Beast. But just beautiful singing, very high pitched. Anyway, Charlie, could you break down a little bit about, what was the dice roll? What are the punishments at a place like Saracens or England, and how that sort of, fits the culture of the teams?
Yeah, it's actually funny you mention that because I have just had another dice roll, and so tomorrow I've got to go into training wearing a full suit. and get changed in and out of the suit in between every rugby session I have and every skills and every meeting. So that's gonna be a hassle. But thanks for reminding me because otherwise I would have had another one. But yeah, the dice roll is yeah, it's an infamous method of keeping discipline and respect in the club. You get a dice roll if you're late to a meeting, or I don't know, you leave your plate out. You just do things that aren't the standards of what the club expects, and so you get different punishments for the dice rolls. One of them being an Instagram live song, and so as you mentioned, Harvey, I did that on Christmas Day. Luckily, to be fair, not as many people tuned in as I thought would, considering it was Christmas. So that was quite good. But yeah, so you get Instagram live with a song. You've got obviously wear a suit to training. Another one is public transport to training, where you have to obviously get public transport for training, and for some players that's an absolute nightmare. Another one is baked goods for the whole squad from the one of the foundation companies that does all the cooking. It's called CJ's Bakery. I'm trying to think if there's any more. There's I think there used to be ones when back and when the Villa Polars were here, it was a lot worse. You'd have to shave your head, you'd have to dye your hair, stuff like that. Wear ridiculous things, but it's got a bit more tame over the years, thankfully. But yeah, like I said, I'm still getting punished for them to this day.
And it's £100 buyout if you don't want to do the dice roll. So most people just like get on with it and do it.
Has Goody Two Shoes Jack had any dice rolls?
I've
I
escaped
don't know
them so
actually.
far, but no, I've not had any yet. They're different for the academy. They're a bit cheaper and not as well. Some of them are worse, but I've
Bit
escaped them
cheaper.
so far.
You hear
Yeah.
Jack's made some money off Bitcoin, doesn't mind paying it out. It's no big issue. Um, going back to that sort of thinking of the collective of your lives in a whole, because as well as having your heads in the books at university and playing on the field, you still have a life with girlfriends, friends, family, sleeping, doing all of those things. I want to ask you this question, Jack. Like, does any part of you feel like, for your first year and now up to this point, that you should have just gone straight into the rugby career? Do you think that having the university has helped your rugby career? What has it been like having a girlfriend at the same time? And do you really believe that, rugby is something that you could make your career into?
That's a really good question because I often ask myself the same questions a lot of the time. Like, did I make a mistake going to uni? Am I missing out on rugby if I'd gone full time? And I think I often need the same answer where I think I'd be in the same position I was rugby wise if I hadn't gone to uni, but I'd be missing out on a lot more if I didn't go to uni. That social side is definitely really important. I also think even the academic side is even more important. I feel like I need something to take my mind off rugby, a mental stimulation, and also a bit of security as well for the future. Like Charlie said, you can get injured and your career's over. So going to university is definitely really helpful in that aspect. And I think it does make me a better player as well. I think having something to take my mind off rugby, so I'm not always thinking about the game. I'm able to switch off. Um, it is definitely a challenge. That time management, like task priorities. When am I gonna see friends? When am I gonna do my uni work? And when am I gonna prioritize training? Like it is difficult, but it's. I'm definitely glad I did go to uni.
And Jack, on that point, you mentioned the injury and, touch wood, nothing like that happens. But even after rugby, the lifetime is, the average life expectancy is so high these days that rugby is almost just like taking another degree because you've got so much more life to live. Have you thought about what you would want to do after rugby as a career?
Sort of. I'm doing economics and management at Loughborough, so something along those lines. I've done work experience with my granddad, who got me a week at EY. So that was definitely interesting. It's probably not something I want to go down the route of necessarily like the consultancy sort of thing. But no, I'm not put too much thought into it. I'd more just focusing on getting my degree and then see what opportunities arise after rugby.
And Charlie?
Yeah, I think, like you said, rugby's such a short career. I think obviously if you do well in rugby, that can extend a little bit into what you're doing afterwards with kind of hospitality and stuff, which my dad's kind of gone into amongst other things. But yeah, like obviously there's so much more to life than just rugby, and I think I'm looking forward to what's next to come after rugby. Obviously, my main focus is rugby now, but I'm not entirely sure what I want to go into. I'm doing geography at uni, which can be quite open ended in terms of what I'd like to go into. But no, I'm looking forward to hopefully, maybe start my own business, something like that. That appeals to me. Um, and I think yeah, like it's just exciting the fact that there could be a lot of different opportunities, and I've got time to make that decision. I think a lot of the time when people go straight out of school into university, and then kind of they don't really have the time to think about what they want to go into straight away. Whereas for me, I feel like I'm going to have a lot of time. Hopefully, if I say finish rugby at say 35, I'm going to have those years to prepare myself for the actual world of work rather than just kicking a ball about.
No, I see LeBron James in you. It's going to be at least 45 before you put the boots up. What's Charlie? What's a question that no one's asked you on a podcast or online forum that you wish they would ask you?
Ooh, that's a really good question. Um, I'll have to have a think.
And Jack, you can have a think as well if you.
Yeah, I am. Yeah. Well,
Maybe a question would be why do you do it? Like what drives you to play rugby, but also to do it even when things aren't going your way, or what drives you to be the best player you can be. And I think my answer to that question would be that I think I obviously play rugby because I love the sport. I really do love the sport. I think it's great. But I think the reason why is because of the people and the connections that it brings you. Not the success is great, obviously, and that's something that I obviously want to be as successful as I can. But I thought a lot about what would make me happy in a career in rugby, and none of that really is tied to success. I think a lot of that is tied to the memories that I make with the people around me and my family and friends. And I think if you would really look back on what I think it applies to a lot of things really. What would make you happiness? What would bring you happiness? Would it be success, or would it be the memories and the people you met along the way? I think for a lot of people, it would be the memories.
And Jack?
I think for me, it would be like, what advice would you give to young rugby players starting out? And for me, it'd be just enjoy every sport, enjoy enjoy rugby, and don't take it too seriously. Don't pigeonhole yourself into one position or one sport. Um, Really, just enjoy every sport available to you because it will really help you. Even if you're not going to become a rugby player, or you're not going to become a professional sportsman, playing sport at such a young age is just so important for development. And if you were to become a rugby player, it will definitely benefit you then as well.
Jack, is there anything that you've had to unlearn as you've embarked on your professional rugby career?
I'd say there's definitely, rugby wise, there's definitely a few habits that I do need to get out of my game. It's funny that you asked that because I seem to having the same reviews with my coaches after a few games, making the same silly choices that I would get away with at a younger level, like an academy level. But now that I'm playing men's rugby, I need to learn how to adapt to the physicality and the how the level has like increased, and how I can make an impact on the game when I'm not able to just break tackles or run round people all the time. How I can really leave my mark on the game in different ways.
And Charlie?
Yeah, things that I've had to unlearn. I think when you're at a low level, obviously things get kind of drilled into you that aren't necessarily the most kind of the best thing. But I do think one thing that people say a lot is that you just have to kind of really push yourself as hard as you can and work unbelievably hard, and that work is going to give you success. The harder you work, the more success you'll get. But I think that really doesn't take account of the complexity of it. I think a lot of the time trying less hard actually gets you further, especially with your mindset and things. For example, for me, I've definitely learned that going into a game being more relaxed and being more chill, and not thinking it's going to be the end of the world, and not overtraining, things like that have actually helped me a lot. Because I think when you look at the best of the best, although those people are incredibly diligent, they also seem to have a sense of calmness and coolness, which I think as a young rugby player, it's hard to see that sometimes, relaxing and chilling is actually more beneficial to you than just, putting your foot on the accelerator.
Ask three final bigger questions and then three closing questions. The first one of which I'll ask you, Charlie. If you could put a message on a billboard or on phones to everyone in the world, what would you say?
Oh, that's a good question. I'd say probably be grateful for what you have. I think especially in this modern day where we're all so caught up in how busy our lives are. It's useful to stop and take a second to be grateful of the people you love and the things that you can afford to do.
Jack?
Um, Probably don't get hijacked by the past and the future, and like live in the present. I guess it's easier said than done, like I said earlier, but yeah.
And when you were both giving questions about what's a question I wish you would have asked, it made me think of an exercise which I thought would be interesting. And I want to start with you, Jack. Is for you both to ask each other a question that you've always wanted to know from each other or that you think could offer an interesting perspective. Jack, do you want to go first?
Yeah. So being an older brother, I just think I could never do what you did. Like set the standard really. And how would you motivate yourself to to push yourself to where you are without having someone to follow like I do?
Yeah, to be fair, that's a good question. I think it's more the other way around. Kind of obviously you looking at it from a middle brother's perspective, as in kind of looking up to someone to give you motivation and inspiration. But for me, I think it was the other way around, as in wanting to be that inspiration and kind of like make you guys proud was what drove me rather than kind of having to motivate myself. I think that's always been there. Obviously, kind of looking up to dad as well, but being an older brother that is someone that you look up to was probably be my motivation behind things. And then a question for Jack. I'd say what has been the hardest part of your rugby journey so far? Has it been the physical side of things? Has it been the mental side of things? What's been the trickiest barriers and trickiest things you feel like you have to overcome?
Yeah, I think the most of my almost not hardships in rugby, but yeah, difficulties would be this year. I think a lot of my younger rugby journey was pretty smooth sailing. I had a couple of injuries that set me back, but I feel like I've always been selected, and I've never had that trouble really. But this year, with the 20s and not getting selected, and with obviously other players pushing for the first team at Sarries, and maybe me getting left behind a little bit, that's probably definitely the hardest thing they've had to deal with. Um, and for me, it was just being patient and trusting in my own ability, trusting that coaches would see what I can do. And I think you as well, like last year or the year before last, and not getting any first team game time and being at Ampthill the whole time, how you were so patient and just worked on yourself and worked on your own game to get you to where you are now. That really helped.
There's a question I wanna ask, the last of my main bigger questions before the closing three, and it's a question that I feel like if in 5 years, 10 years after you both have, or in the midst of your very successful rugby careers, a question that I would have wanted to know the answer to. And I'll ask you first, Charlie, and you can say your dad, but you can also say someone else. Is there anyone that you particularly look up to within the world of rugby that you try and base your game off?
Yeah, I think my dad would be my inspiration, kind of growing up. But in terms of now, obviously he's still a massive inspiration for me. But in terms of kind of someone that I would have kind of modelled my game off in a sense, not necessarily modelled my game off, but I think Aaron Smith, the way he's like got to being one of the best liners in the world, and he did that through because when he was younger, he was like the smallest player on the pitch, and he just had to work really hard on his skills to get him to where he was. I think that's been an inspiration to me, being like, you've just got to really work hard on yourself, and no matter how naturally talented you are, if there's a person that will do more reps than you, they're probably gonna be playing for their country over you. So I think his story especially is one that's quite inspiring to me.
I think growing up, watching loads of wingers and back three, I think Chris Aston was definitely an idol of mine at Saracens. Just his unbelievable work rate, and his wheels, like really, I thought that was really cool. But I think more recently, Will Jordan, obviously playing for the All Blacks, almost see myself in him a bit, with his super strengths and how he can impact a game. But then I also see how he has other impacts on the game without using his speed, with his skills, with his kicking. Um, and yeah, so that's someone who definitely inspires me.
So I've looked at the 5, 10 years back, and who you'd base it off. Jack, I want to ask you this first, and this is the first of my three final questions. What's next for you? And you can look at this scope over 3 months, a year, 5 years, 10 years. Like, where do you, if someone was to look back at this podcast and be like, this is where Jack Bracken thought he was going to be on the 25th of May, 2025, what place do you think you'll be in then?
My goal is to break into the first team of Saris. Um, my near goal is I say this with my dad, to have a Henry Arundel moment in the World Cup, how he burst onto the scene with London Irish. I want to have that moment. Um, and then, yeah, longer term, I want to be in the Saris team.
And Charlie?
Yeah, I think obviously at the minute I'm on the bench at size, and I think kind of I just want to keep driving that. Hopefully in the future at some point, starting a couple of games or a season maybe. But I think after having a taste of it, yeah, I just want to obviously be the best player I can, but experience success with Saris. I think that there's such a good young group coming through at the moment at Saris, and I think there's a lot of potential to go and win things. And I think that would be incredibly special to me. Would be to win something with Saris, whether that be the Premiership, European, like literally anything. I would love to be successful for Saris, and then kind of long term, looking to the future. Like I would hope to play for England one day. That would be my long term goal.
So my penultimate question, Charlie, if I was to ask someone in 100 years, 150 years time, what would you want them, how would you want them to describe you, and what would you want your legacy to be?
Yeah, I think, well, I wouldn't say it'd be anything to do with rugby really. I'd say more on a personality type of thing. Someone that cared for others, someone that was hardworking, and did the most for those that he loves around them, and yeah, almost made the most of his life. I think that's one thing that, looking back, I think if I enjoy my life and I make the most of it, then looking back, I'll be happy.
I think for me, I disagree with Charlie. I'd say I would want to be remembered for my rugby. I think that's such a big part of my life, to make a name for myself in the rugby environment. But then obviously after, obviously like Charlie said, being someone remembered who loved their family, loved their friends, and he's just a good bloke. Just
And my final question, and I ask this to every guest on Personable, and I'll ask it first to you, Jack, is what is one thing that you would want a listener to take away from this episode?
um, I'd say, yeah, like you said, the importance of who you have around you, like the five people you said, the importance of the relationships with your family, your brothers, your sisters, um, and really appreciating those relationships. And yeah.
And Charlie?
I'd say one thing to take from it is probably that whatever you do in life, it's not going to be straightforward. I think the harder it is, the more challenges there are, the better it feels when you overcome those challenges and either succeed or just get to a better place. I think no matter what journey you're on, the most you can get out of it and enjoy it is will make you happy in the long run.
When I was researching this podcast, and even before we're starting, I mean, just it wasn't even a conscious thing. I started like internally giggling, and I think it's funny something when you're like speaking to family and speaking to friends, you focus on the person and just sometimes forget like how well you're actually doing. Because I just know you as my cousins, but then when I actually look at the path of where you were, and what's funny is, to me as your cousin, I always knew that you were going to be in the position you're in now. And it's not even where you are now, but where you're going to be when you're actually playing for the teams and getting trophies and stuff. And the reason I could sort of like had that intuition, aside from anything going wrong, which fortunately hasn't, was the sense of just how hardworking you were, how disciplined, that even on your holidays, you were working your ass off. And so it's a testament to both of you to where you are. I wrote down 5 words which are top of mind, and I'm sure I can think of another 30. But I wrote down humble, intelligent, kind, hardworking, and generous. And I feel like that list goes on, because what differentiates you from the average people, not just in rugby, but also aside, is that you are sort of values first and rugby and everything else second. And I think that's a testament to you. It's a testament to your parents and the way you live your lives. I've really enjoyed, listening to your stories. I mean, it's one thing to see outwardly what you're doing with Saracens, with England, and winning the World Cup, and continually pushing for first team spots, both of you, and Jack yesterday getting man of the match and 4 tries. But the way that you handle yourselves externally, but your mindsets, your learnings, and your willingness to keep pushing forward and keep going, I think is what truly separates you. So thank you both, Charlie and Jack, for coming on Personable, and I hope there's a lot that the listeners can take away from this episode.
Thanks, Harvey.
I'd add to that though, from mine and Jack's perspective, what we do to us feels easy. Kind of looking at your path and how well you've done, the barriers that you've faced and the challenges you've overcome, and also from my perspective, what you're doing at the moment with uni and your podcast, and obviously you've got your internship coming up over the summer. Like, that's way harder than kicking a ball about and playing rugby. So no, like similar kind of thoughts, like kind of respect and how hard you've worked to get to where you are as well. So yeah, keep it up.
Yeah, we always used to say we always knew Harvey was going to be the billionaire of the family. So it's great to see it coming into fruition.
Yeah, I'll buy the rugby club and make sure you guys are starting, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, thanks. Appreciate that.